Families in L.A. try to reach their relatives in Japan after that massive earthquake.
The tsunami advisory closes beaches here in SoCal. Flights canceled out of LAX. Team coverage is next.
Good morning, I'm Dick Helton.
And I'm Vicki Moore. It's Friday, March 11th. Here's what's happening at 7:09. That devastating earthquake and tsunami in Japan causing a lot of concern here in Southern California. Beaches and harbors closed, airline flights canceled, and a lot of people trying to reach their loved ones in the quake zone. Our team coverage on KNX starts with John Baird. He is live in Newport Beach.
Officials have shut down all the harbors, beaches, and piers here. The Newport Pier is blocked off by a bunch of trucks right now. The major concern, strong currents. Jennifer Schultz is with Newport Beach Fire.
We don't expect any wave activity till approximately 8:30. We are clearing the beaches well before that to just ensure that everybody is off the beach.
One man went home to grab some supplies just in case and his passport, and he said authorities were calling everyone early.
They called up all the residents on their landlines, giving a warning of a tsunami warning to just be aware of it and not go in the water.
And authorities have been kicking surfers out of the water, too. Live in Newport Beach, John Baird, KNX 1070 News Radio.
In L.A. County, the only beach closed so far is Malibu, just as a precaution. San Diego County beaches, harbors, and piers also closed. They're expecting some strong currents and waves up to 2 feet high in La Jolla and Imperial Beach, so just 2 feet high.
Obviously, a lot of concern in L.A.'s Little Tokyo this morning. Let's take you there live. Here's KNX 1070's John Brooks.
One man told me he couldn't reach his sister in Tokyo by telephone, but he'll be trying again later today, perhaps when the volume of telephone calls drops off or perhaps service gets better. Japan has 4 main islands. The earthquake was on the northern part of the main island of Honshu, and if you have relatives there, there's a whole lot of concern this morning. But for this man who has relatives in the south, not quite as much.
Oh, yeah. Well, in southern Japan, they just heard about it on the radio, that's it, and the television. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that thing lasted like 5 minutes.
In the hotel lobbies, clerks are telling me people have been logging onto the internet in hopes of finding out more from remote areas of Japan where communications are cut off. Live in LA's Little Tokyo, John Brooks, KNX 1070 News Radio.
KNX News Time 7:11. We're going to go live now to Tokyo. Tom Byer is an American living and working in Tokyo. He's got a family, 2 young children, and he suffered through this earthquake. Tom, thank you for joining us live. Just tell us how you're doing.
No problem. I'm doing fine. It's a little bit after midnight now. The quake struck a little bit before 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's kind of lucky. It's a Friday afternoon. I came home early from work, and I've got 2 little boys, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and my wife. And I've been living in Japan for 25 years, so we kind of, we learned to live with these tremors and quakes. But I mean, this one was just different. It just was never ending.
Tom, let me ask you this. On the basis of what you're able to learn, I don't know how much information you're able to get through there in Tokyo on local television and things like that, but the images that we're seeing here in Sendai and some of these other towns that were affected by the tsunami are just extraordinary.
Yeah, they are. I've been watching it all day, and you get a lot different local coverage here that's going out into the international community. I mean, basically, Sendai is northeast of Tokyo, and all those areas that are devastated by the tsunami, those are all coastal fishing areas. So if you see those, you can see the kind of characteristic of these white and blue boats, these huge boats that are floating almost like little toys in a bathtub. Those are all fishing. But I mean, the economical impact this is going to have on that region is going to be devastating.
And also what we're hearing is the fact that we've got, in some reports, of hundreds of people that have been found dead. I mean, the death toll seems to be very difficult to try to put a number on. But what are you hearing there right now?
Well, the official count, we haven't heard in the hundreds yet. But again, it's still early. It's nighttime here. I mean, search and rescue is virtually, impossible to do at this point. One thing I would say, I mean, it really differs between what happened in Thailand and Indonesia several years ago with the big tsunami, is that the early warning system here is quite sophisticated. I mean, even before this quake hit, my cell phone started, it was an alarm. I didn't even know what it was at first, but my phone basically became activated, and it was an early warning signal that the earthquake was actually coming. But as soon as the earthquake hits in Japan here, everybody dashes to the telephone to see exactly where the center was, to see what the tsunami warning is going to be. So, I mean, the fingers are crossed, but I'm hoping it's not going to be this big devastation. I'm sure it's not going to be like it was in Thailand.
dashing to the telephone. I mean, Tom, when there's like a 5.5 here in Los Angeles, I'm running outside like a crazy person because it makes me all nervous. And when I heard that this was an 8.9 earthquake, I thought,
we've got another one that's coming right now. I've got a big tremor coming right as I'm sitting here.
Go ahead, tell us about it.
So that's just, I'm just sitting here, everything's shaking. This is just like endless, man. It's I've never seen this, felt this before in my life. It's not terrible, but it's there. It seems like since it started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we've had absolutely no relief from it. It's just continuously shaking constantly.
Now, the quake in Japan initially rocked the financial markets, but things are settling down a little bit on Wall Street. Here's our money editor, Bob McCormick.
Actually, Dick, we've been positive a few times, although right now the Dow is down by 31, the NASDAQ off by 5, the S&P 500 is flat.
KNX News Time, 7:43.
And continuing our coverage here this morning on that massive earthquake in Japan, Stephanie Suzuki is in Japan right now. In fact, Stephanie, she's on the news line with us now. You are, as I understand it, about 100 miles from the epicenter of the quake?
I'm not as close as that, but we're inland from Tokyo, so we're farther than that.
Okay, but just give me a description of what happened as the quake occurred.
Yes, well, I'm from Southern California originally, and it's the biggest earthquake I've experienced. It's like our whole apartment just felt like it went back and forth from side to side for a couple of minutes. It was really bigger than either of us had experienced before.
KNX News Time, 7:46. Let's update you on traffic and weather together on the 5s. Sponsored by your Southern California BMW Centers. Here's Tommy.
By the way, this is a great opportunity and a reminder to be earthquake prepared here in Southern California in your home, your work, and also your vehicle.
This is Southern California's all-news radio station, KNX 1070 News Radio. I'm Dick Helton.
And I'm Vicki Moore. Here's what we know right now about that 8.9 magnitude earthquake in Japan. The tsunami that followed had 23-foot waves. The damage and death toll growing by the minute. We are just learning that a dam has broken in northeastern Japan, washing away homes. No word yet how many. That was from the Kyoto News Agency. But this wave and the debris pushing over the land has taken with it a train, ships, hundreds of cars, just wiped out homes, buried bodies in the rubble. At least 300 people found in one town alone. A nuclear reactor cooling system had failed. Actually, a few of them had problems, but it is expected to be restored soon. More, another update coming up in just minutes here on KNX. KNX News Time, 7:49.
By the way, we're told apparently now that President Obama is going to have a statement about this at 9:30 this morning. He had originally had a news conference scheduled at 8:15. We understand apparently that has been pushed back. The president will have something more to say about what the United States will be able to do to help those in Japan. Going back now live to Tokyo, Erwin Furukawa actually works for SoCal Edison, but is in Tokyo right now, joining us live on the line, where it's, about 1:30 in the morning or something like that, Erwin?
That's correct. It's about 1:30 in the morning right here in Tokyo.
Yeah, so what's happening where you are right now? What do you see? What's happening in Tokyo?
Well, as I look outside my window right now, I just see cars that are just jammed right now. The traffic is not moving at all. My understanding is that that all the trains are down, have stopped running, and the expressways are actually blocked right now, and they're closed. So what's happening is there are a lot of people just stranded here.
Sure. Is that the result? We've talked to some other people earlier this morning indicating that there's a lot of power out. For example, millions of homes were being told that are without power in Japan right now. Is that a result of what you're seeing there in Tokyo?
From my hotel room, no. The power is on here, fortunately. At one time, the elevators in this hotel were actually shut down, but now they're operating. And we have power here.
And what was it like as the quake hit at your location?
Well, I was in a bus, and I was part of a delegation that was actually arriving for a conference or a meeting. And we had just pulled into the parking lot, and the bus had just stopped. And all of a sudden, the bus driver backed the bus up, and he had said something about earthquake, and he wanted to get us away from the danger of any buildings that were collapsing. And all of a sudden, the bus just started rocking back and forth, left and right. So it was pretty frightening. And as I looked out the right window, I saw people running out of the hotel building out into the open area. And so I knew that this was something pretty major. And the bus just continued to rock back and forth. And frankly, it seemed like it lasted a long time. and there was a fear that I had that this thing was going to tip over. So it was pretty scary.
Now at 8:40, let's update your money. Here's Bob McCormick.
Well, there was a big earthquake on Wall Street yesterday. Today, the Japan earthquake has caused barely a ripple. We're actually positive across the board with stocks up. The Dow exceeded positive territory for the first time. The Nasdaq up by 5, and the S&P 500. And CBS Jill Schlesinger of Money Watch says it shouldn't be a big surprise because this does not historically move the markets that much.
If this were to happen someplace where there were major manufacturing going on, maybe that would disrupt some of the exporters. But I don't think this is enough to derail the global economic recovery.
KNX News Time 8:43.
Vicki was reporting on this a moment ago. We got some damage apparently in Santa Cruz from the waves out of Japan, the tsunami effect. And joining us live from the Bay Area, CBS News reporter Matt Bigler. Matt, you're at the harbor. What's going on?
Yeah, we're here at the Santa Cruz Harbor, and let me just tell you what I'm looking at. There's a fishing boat that has broken free of its dock here at the harbor. It has floated out the harbor with no one in control. It's now just sort of ramming up against the shoal next to the lighthouse here in Santa Cruz. That's not the only damage. Several docks have broken loose. There's a dredging boat, a dredging ship for the harbor that was connected to a metal dock, a floating metal dock. And when the water first flowed out to sea in that first wave, that whole thing broke loose, and now that's sort of floating free at this point.
Just getting word from Reuters, more than 300 people have been killed. That number has been kind of holding steady this morning because they found 300 bodies in just one area of Japan alone. At least 500 missing following that quake in Japan. 8.9 magnitude. The tsunami that followed, the waves 23 feet high. Talked a little earlier this morning about some celebrities sort of tangled up in this. Jimmy Kimmel had to be evacuated. Now learning that some of the actors from the Twilight series, Taylor Lautner and Kristen Stewart, had to be evacuated up in British Columbia just as a precaution. Flights affected here in Southern California, some out of LAX canceled, so be sure and call ahead if you're going to Tokyo or perhaps Hawaii.
Here's what's happening at 9:03.
Reports now of some docks being damaged and boats breaking free in Santa Cruz as California gets hit by the tsunami triggered by Japan's huge earthquake. The first waves came ashore farther north in Crescent City, and now they're reaching our area too. KNX 1070's Ron Kilgore is standing by live in Seal Beach.
So far, the waves are running 2 to 3 feet. That's about normal, but long-timers say they are pulling back a little bit more than they normally do, more of a riptide sort of effect, which could indicate some bigger waves are coming, but for now, nothing major. All the buzz right here, and there's several hundred people here, is what is happening in Santa Cruz. A boater telling me that a friend of his had his boat capsized. Right now, there's a big watch around here for what might be happening. We've got patrol boats out here watching. So far, no major factors involved, but for now, the pier stays shut down, as does the beach. No surfing today. Reporting live from Seal Beach, Ron Kilgore, KNX 1070 News Radio. Want to get right back into tsunami coverage here. The waves coming ashore here in California after the devastating quake in Japan. One of the areas most at risk is Crescent City, up near the border with Oregon. And joining us now live on the Newsline, Crescent City Councilman Richard Anaya. Councilman Anaya, what is the latest? How badly has your community been hit?
Well, the first surge came ashore at about 8:25, and that was a 3-foot surge reported by the National Weather Service. There is damage to our harbor. We haven't assessed it yet because there's other surges on its way. So we have the town locked down. The people evacuated out of our town of 6,000. They're in at the high school shelter, and downtown is a complete ghost town.
KNX News Time 9:10.
Japanese earthquake being felt on Wall Street. Here's KNX 1070's Frank Motek.
Well, the impact certainly rippling through the financial markets as well as the business world. We continue to monitor the damage reports coming in from Japan. And the reports we got just a little while ago said Honda said one employee died from a collapsing wall and 30 others were injured from falling ceilings when the 8.9 magnitude quake hit its Toshigi Research and Development Center north of Tokyo. Honda suspended operations at 3 plants in Japan. Toyota reports there have been no injuries reported at its head office in Tokyo, nor several other facilities. And Nissan reports it believes its operations in Japan have not been significantly affected. Many Japanese company stocks have traded lower today, traded here in the U.S., including Hitachi, Panasonic, Honda, Nissan, and Toyota all moving lower today. Overall, the market is moving higher with the Dow right now up 25 points at 12,009, NASDAQ up 9 at 2,710, and the S&P 500 up 6 points at 1301. Frank Motek, KNX 1070 News Radio.
KNX News Time 9:13. Areas of the California coast are under a tsunami warning north of Point Conception. South of Point Conception, we're under a tsunami advisory, and the first waves of a tsunami were felt in the Ventura Harbor a short time ago, about 20 minutes or so ago. Joining us now live on the Newsline, Scott Miller of the Ventura Harbor Patrol. Mr. Miller, what effects have been noticed there in Ventura?
Well, we just had our first surge come in about 8:52. It raised the water 2 feet over an 8-minute period, and now it's receding. So far, we don't have any damages.
Yeah, the way you're describing it, it almost sounds like a mini tide coming in for a while.
It's a really fast incoming tide, yes.
Well, last time this happened, there was some damage in the Ventura Harbor, and I'm curious how this time, so far at least, is comparing with what happened last time.
Last time it came at a very low tide, and so as the water receded, actually down in the Ventura Keys, we had a number of docks that got so low that their ramps fell off the docks, and that's what caused a lot of damage. Fortunately, this time the tide's a little bit higher. We don't anticipate that'll happen again.
The one thing we always hear, though, is that the first surge may not be the most significant one, and I'm curious if you have any kind of information or anything that would lead you to believe you might expect anything more.
We have been in telephone contact with Morro Bay, who's been giving us advice, advising us when they're getting their surges, and they did get a second surge just about the time we were getting our first surge. And then, of course, we've been looking at the news and seeing what happened up in Santa Cruz. So we don't think we're out of the woods yet.
KNX News Time, 9:20.
The sports world is beginning to respond to the earthquake in Japan. Here's KNX 1070's Chris Madsen.
Indeed. In the wake of Japan's deadly 8.9 earthquake, all weekend matches in that nation's top soccer league have been postponed, as well as baseball throughout the country. However, the International Skating Union has said that it has no plans to cancel the Figure Skating World Championships in Tokyo, which is scheduled to begin in 10 days. Reportedly, an initial assessment of the Yoyogi National Stadium, where the championships will be held, shows no signs of damage, which is pretty remarkable considering the stadium was built 50 years ago in preparation for the 1964 Tokyo Olympics.
KNX News Time 9:23. Japan reeling from a massive earthquake. Destruction still being assessed. Joining us now live, research seismologist Frank Vernon of Scripps Institution of Oceanography in La Jolla. Mr. Vernon, this is one of the biggest earthquakes ever recorded, 8.9 from what we understand. What were some of the others?
Some of the other recent big ones were the Indonesia 9.2 earthquake, which occurred in 2004 on Boxing Day, and then we had an 8.8 in Chile last year.
And, of course, we just had that big quake in New Zealand. Both of these quakes, the Japanese one today and the New Zealand one in the so-called Ring of Fire. Any chances that these kind of things are connected? Because we're talking really large earthquakes and really massive movement of the earth, I would think.
There's 2 points there. One, that's a very commonly asked question, but they're very far apart, and so there's no correlation or connection that we can see. And second, the one in New Zealand was actually not that big, but in a very destructive area. The earthquake itself was about a magnitude 7.2, which was about the same size. We have one every month around the world somewhere.
President Obama is expected to talk about the disaster in Japan during a news conference, which is due to start any minute now. We're watching the podium, and as soon as the president approaches the podium, we'll be taking you live to the president's news conference. He actually pushed this news conference back a little bit after the earthquake and tsunami hit, so he could get up-to-date briefings on the situation. Now the president of the United States.
That struck Japan earlier today. First and foremost, our thoughts and our prayers are with the people of Japan. This is a potentially catastrophic disaster, and the images of destruction and flooding coming out of Japan are simply heartbreaking.
Tsunami advisory in force for Southern California. Boaters need to be especially worried about high wave action. Joining us now live, Petty Officer Scott Eggers of Coast Guard Station Los Angeles. Petty Officer, what's your advice now for boaters with this tsunami advisory in effect?
Well, our biggest advice is if your vessel is in the marina to go ahead and tie that down, what we call doubling up on all lines. We're seeing in marinas up and down the California coast, vessels breaking free, sinking, and running into other vessels, and that causes a huge pollution concern for us. And also, if they're already out, move farther away from shore just to be a little bit more safe. And also for the folks that are either on boats or out on the beach, I would strongly advise that they stay out of the water. We're not going to see the big movie-type waves coming through, but what we are seeing is a lot stronger undercurrent and a lot more things going on below the surface of the water than we had initially expected. We're seeing a lot of harbors that are full of mud now, the water is, because so much power is being generated off the ocean floor. So even though it doesn't look to the naked eye like there's a lot of things going on, underneath the surface of the water, there's a lot of dangerous aspects happening.
More now on our continuing coverage of the quake and tsunami in Japan and its impact on Southern California beaches. KNX 1070's Tom Riopel is standing by live in Imperial Beach.
San Diego authorities are advising people to avoid beaches and coastal waters, but looky-loos are everywhere. Rory's a boater. He says it's kind of unusual for low tide to last this long.
Well, there's no reason for the tide to reverse itself other than the water just sucking out to feed the height of the tsunami out at sea.
Are you concerned at all about any kind of flooding, that kind of stuff?
Not really, not from what they said hit Hawaii and what's hit the coast north of us.
No reports of any damage in San Diego, and the Navy has not moved any of its ships. Live in Imperial Beach, Tom Riopel, KNX 1070 News Radio.
At Caltech, the seismology lab, experts have been poring over the data from the Japan quake, and they're learning some surprising things in the first few hours following the disaster.
Dr. Susan Huff, a seismologist with the U.S. Geological Survey, says it's the magnitude of this quake along with its location that are unusual.
We know where the active plate boundaries are on the Earth and where the active earthquake zones are, but what's the size of the earthquake that we expect?
What theory did we expect here? Somewhere in the 6 or 7 range?
Well, no, it would have been up in the 8. We know it's a subduction zone, but from an 8 to an 8.9 is from, a big earthquake to an enormous earthquake.
Huff says they'll be pulling data and reviewing information from this quake and the expanse and effects of the tsunami that followed for months, if not years, to come.
KNX News Time 1022. Emergency services on alert up and down the coast of Southern California now as tsunami waves are beginning to come ashore. Joining us now live from Seal Beach, City Police Sergeant Steve Bowles. Sergeant Bowles, we've been told that basically the effects of this tsunami have been minimal so far. What is the situation there in Seal Beach?
Good morning. Well, the latest update that I just received from our Emergency Operations Center was that the tsunami surge has yet to hit our city and our coastline. It's still up in the Ventura, coming down in the northern Los Angeles County area. And the information that we've received is the bigger waves and the tsunami surge is still yet to come.
In Northern California, we're getting word a man has been swept out to sea while taking pictures of the waves. Joining us live on the KNX Newsline now, Coast Guard Lieutenant Todd Warrenkamp. Lieutenant Warrenkamp, what's the latest on the search for this guy?
Well, we got the call around just after 10 a.m. that 3 men had been swept off of the beach into the Pacific Ocean. We've been searching for coming up on 3 hours now. We have 2 helicopters up there right now searching, and we have 2 of the gentlemen made it ashore by themselves, and 1 person still unaccounted for.
An L.A. County Fire Search and Rescue team just back from New Zealand has now been asked to get ready to go to Japan.
Some of the recently returned team members may have to head back out, according to Fire Captain Brian Wells.
It's just a matter of digging deep inside and getting the strength to go through.
Here's what Wells had to say about some of the footage of the damage caused by the earthquake and tsunami in Japan.
It was dramatic and devastating and sad all at the same time. You feel so bad for the people who felt the earthquake, and then all of a sudden the waves are coming through and chasing cars down the road.
At this fire facility in Pacoima, preparations for another deployment are well underway.
We are going to go in there as self-sufficient as we can be.
Claudia Pescuta, KNX 1070 News Radio.
KNX News Time, 3:15.
Now on KNX 1070 News Radio.
We're just getting this word that Governor Brown has declared a state of emergency in Del Norte, Humboldt, San Mateo, and Santa Cruz counties because of the tsunami waves that they have had coming in today. So keep it tuned here to KNX 1070 News Radio for the very latest. Joining us live once again on the KNX Newsline is Crescent City Councilman Richard Anea. So, Councilman, I heard some of your interviews earlier today. You are bracing for more tsunami problems this afternoon?
Yes, we are up here in Del Norte County, Crescent City. The President Obama has made FEMA available to us if we need them. Our harbor is devastated. If you look at it, there's nothing left of it. All the floating docks are gone. They're crumbled, they're broken, there's floating debris in the harbor. We're having surge after surge, and the U.S. Geological Service tells us there's a major surge that is coming. Now, the biggest one we've had so far was at 10 o'clock this morning. It was 8 feet 1 inch, and we're hoping it doesn't get a bigger one because this will flood our downtown area. So far, we've been lucky. Damage has been confined just to the harbor.
Seal Beach is back open. KNX 1070's Ron Kilgore is there and joins us live.
The pier has just reopened already. It's full of people moving up and down the beach, also people walking along the shoreline right now. We think it's possible we got 2 surges, but they were very small surges throughout the day. You can only really tell up against the rocks here at the jetties here as they had a little extra activity. So far, there were absolutely no major problems that were caused, but they were taking precautions throughout the day. Seal Beach, the last major beach to open, but now the yellow tape has come down. People are walking along like it's another regular day under the bright sunshine. Reporting live from Seal Beach, Ron Kilgore, KNX 1070 News Radio.
It's going on 9:30 Saturday morning in Japan, and the morning sun has shown the extent of the devastation from yesterday's earthquake and tsunami. Tom Beyer is an American living in Tokyo, and he joins us live on the KNX Newsline. So, Tom, what are the local media there reporting this morning about the destruction in Japan?
Well, depending on what channel you watch, I mean, the big story, well, first of all, in Tokyo, the big story is just the people that were stranded last night because after the quake hit, the train stopped like clockwork, so there were lots of people stranded, had to stay in office buildings and outside. Aside from that, they're just showing coverage of the search and rescue in the tsunami areas, but I think the biggest story is these nuclear reactors that they can't seem to get under control with the cooling system, and they're afraid that they might have a meltdown.
Tom, we spoke earlier with an expert, a person who helped with the last major tsunami disaster in 2004, and she said part of the problem in the early hours after a big event like this, a big destruction like this, is getting information out to people. We hear so much on all the major networks here in the United States, but getting the information to people in the area affected is very difficult. Are you noticing that?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, I've got lots of friends that actually live in the places that are really hit the worst, and you can't get any contact with them at all. All cell phones are down, and people are evacuated, and they're, hopefully they're in safe places, but you see pictures of them all gathered up in schools and in public facilities, sleeping on floors. So yeah, I think it's quite difficult. Although I'll just have to imagine and hope that the people who are gathered at these public facilities, they're getting the attention and the information that's needed. But the people who are living away from the area can't connect with all the loved ones and the friends that are affected, and that's why it's a big problem for everybody.
I want to get back to the nuclear power plants you were speaking of. Are you concerned? Are your friends and neighbors concerned about these power plants?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting. I'm actually, I don't know if you guys know, but I'm actually I'm on myself public on national television every morning. I'm a former professional soccer player, and I have a soccer corner that shows every day for 13 years. And I do events all over the country, and I've done many events and have many friends in these devastated areas. And in fact, some of these nuclear facilities, I've been hired over the years by the company who actually built them to do events for kids and people in the surrounding areas as kind of a PR thing, because they actually had those nuclear facilities in those areas. So I know the area quite well and know a lot of people that are out there.
Tom, you're a couple hundred miles south of where the tsunami happened, the earthquake happened yesterday. You're in Tokyo. As you look out the window this morning, like we say, it's about 9:30 in the morning. What are you seeing outside this morning?
No, everything's fine.
Oh, okay.
So people should be rest assured. Tokyo's fine. I mean, limited damage. It's not like you've got collapsed buildings at all. It was just really the really bad shake and then the aftershock that just went on relentlessly all through the night. But things are kind of back to normal as they can be. The trains are starting to run. You go out, cars are going by, everything. I took a little drive around our neighborhood. There's no damage whatsoever, so it's like nothing happened. But, of course, there are some areas in Tokyo that were affected, but the real story is outside of Tokyo. Tom,
any second thoughts about living in Japan?
Well, I've been here for over 25 years. My life's here. I built a house here. I've got a family here. So, and we live with this possibility, but when it really hits, it really brings it back to home.